sweet tons of documents that had to be printed, stamped, signed, and shipped. At a time where there was one road and there was no buildings and there was no Burj Khalifa and there was nothing.
I see this problem here.
Nowadays, everything is a bubble.
What made ProTenders work?
And I think it's a big cliche. Make construction less risky. How do you try and save what we have? How do you try and save knowledge? Cash flow is the big issue. If you can just be found, but you can't do anything else, what's the point? There's still too many tools that are not talking to each other. It's always the people you don't expect them to be. We're quite blessed. This is what makes you unicorn. How did you guys do this? You can't spend your time trying to wait for people to change their minds. So it's a bit of a tricky question. Do I believe? Of course I believe, man. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of the AI-based Business Show, the show where you'll best learn about business, tech, entrepreneurship. Today, I have with me a special guest, Karim Helal. He's working in construction tech, which I haven't had on this podcast, and this is why I'm excited about it. Karim, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
Karim, if we were to end the podcast in 1 minute and you had one phrase to tell the audience that would change their life, what would that phrase be?
Good question, actually. I would tell you honestly, the entrepreneurship is an extremely hard path. It's something that you struggle with every single day, but there's nothing more fulfilling as a person than trying to solve a problem that you see. And the more you get to see no, the more people tell you no, the more it means that you want to do something big. So persistence is important, and sticking to your vision is important, and just learn to go ahead, whatever happens to you. It's something that I've been facing for the last 7 years now, and I can tell you for a fact that I would never go back to not doing what I'm doing today.
Who is Karim Helal?
Karim Helal is the son of an entrepreneur who never wanted to be an entrepreneur, who never wanted to be back in the region, who came back to the region, who believes that life is what happens when you're busy making plans, who likes to learn new things every day, and who believes in the power of connections and the power of randomness more than anything else. My story is I grew up in Abu Dhabi. I grew up in the UAE at a time so my dad came to the UAE in 1968, before it was a country, at a time where there was one road and there was no buildings and there was no Burj Khalifa and there was nothing. And so we were raised with this building mentality of just imagine things and you can do them. And you are gonna suffer through it. It's gonna be painful, difficult, but it will eventually get there. So I grew up here, spent 17 years in the UAE initially to go as part of this first phase. Then went to Canada by myself when I was 17 to study. And then I discovered the other part of Karim Helal, which is a person that loves to have fun, loves to meet people, loves to connect, loves the speed at which things move sometimes in North America. Did my engineering degree, worked for Ericsson for a bunch of years, was the fastest growing employee at Ericsson, and then got sick of being an employee, did my MBA. And then effectively came back to the region here out of nowhere when my father passed away. So we came back, took over his business, and effectively everything happened. So I effectively feel that I've had 3 or 4 different lives already, and very different ones. Every part of my life has been different.
You speak about connections and you believe in the network. If you were to look back at your career up until now, what's a connection or someone you've met that changed your trajectory in a way or another? Like, could you identify one person or someone who you met and after that, like, okay, wow, that's life-changing?
I'll give you a simple, there's been hundreds of them. And again, it's always the people you don't expect them to be. But I'll give you a simple story that just happened to me recently, which again solidifies that. So there's this particular person that was one of the first tech entrepreneurs in Dubai. And we were part of the first wave of entrepreneurs in the region. Around 2015, he left. He disappeared off the face of the map. And effectively, you get busy with life. I completely forgot about him. And about a month and a half ago, I was in the yacht. I was in a hotel, I couldn't sleep, and his name came out of nowhere. And so I said, whatever happened to this guy? So I go online, I look him up on LinkedIn, couldn't find him. I go on Instagram, couldn't find him. I go on Facebook, I couldn't find him. I go on Google, I couldn't find anything past the time where he left the region. And I'm like, that's weird. And then I went to bed. A month to the day after that particular event, I was talking at a conference, and then at some point I turn around, and who do I see? That guy.
Oh, wow.
And that one particular meeting changed the complete course of what we're doing now for the next, probably couple of years. So
Okay.
you have to be open to this kind of conversations, these kind of meetings, and which is why I would say you should never refuse talking to people. You should never refuse, because everything you do, you're going to learn as much as you're going to speak to people. So that's why I've been a mentor for the last effectively 10 years, because I honestly think that you learn more by being a mentor than what you're giving out in terms of feedback to other people.
Okay. Let's jump in what you do best, construction and construction tech. I want to establish the ground and speak more first about what is the state of the construction industry in the GCC and in the MENA region.
So it's a booming industry, as you can imagine, because of Saudi mostly. So the UAE has been building for the last 40 years. They're now a lot more on the more stable in terms of growth. Saudi is where most of the action is today. There's over $1.5 trillion worth of projects happening, and this is only the giga projects without considering everything else. At the same time, it's an industry that is still very archaic, very old school, that's still trying to find ways to adopt technology without really finding the right ways of doing it. So it's an interesting problem because that's been changing quite rapidly pretty much everywhere else. Whereas you see Europe, the US, Asia, they've adopted technologies and they've adopted new way of doing things. And that's slowly coming to the region here. So it's a great moment to be in now, because especially in Saudi, where there's more and more of a desire to adopt technologies to build what they're trying to build, because they know they won't be able to do it any other way, right?
Right.
And so Saudi is interesting because it's become really a catalyst for construction tech in the region.
Okay. What is construction tech? We hear about the construction industry. We think, okay, buildings, we know the AutoCAD and whatever civil engineers use, whatever architects use. What is construction tech?
It's everything from how do you design a building, how do you find the raw materials for it, how do you find new ways of building, cheaper, better, more efficient, more sustainable. It's how do you find cement that absorbs carbon instead of producing it. It's how do you connect people together so you can optimize supply chain. It's a simple example. One of the platforms that I saw a few years ago in the US, which is now coming here, is a platform where you can design your site map, and it will right away give you the optimal configuration of that building without you doing anything else. So bringing
Right.
AI into the design process. You can do that at the whole building level. You can do it at the design level. It's AR, VR for you to be able to understand what's going on at any point in time. It's for you to be able to understand what's happening in real life compared to 3D models, so you can see what's going on. It's digitizing every single part of the process, from imagining a building, designing a building, building the building, and then operating the building, right? The whole life cycle is being digitized nowadays.
Okay. You speak about AI in here, and the question is, do construction and AI intersect at some point? How is that
Yeah, of course.
intersection? What technologies, like what use cases are you seeing, if you don't mind sharing some of these use
Of
cases?
course, like I said, I mean, the first one that I saw was how do you use AI to design a building?
Okay.
I basically 90% of the initial phase of the building design can be automated completely. So you have different options that will perfectly fit the requirements that are trying to be designed. Then you of course have to develop it more and stuff, right? But it gives you that. Two, you're going to have a lot of AI for optimizing the construction process, assigning people. How do you optimize deliveries? How do you optimize the products? The whole, what we do also on our side, which is the whole tendering and bidding part. How do you optimize the pricing? How do you optimize the right people to work with? How do you, what are the right companies to work with you for that kind of project based on everything they've done before? So there's a lot of ways to use data to make construction less risky. And that's why AI comes in.
Okay. What is ProTenders? If I was your customer, and you're the founder and CEO of ProTenders,
Yeah.
if I'm someone, I want to get a construction project, I'm in the construction space, I see ProTenders, what am I doing here? What's the platform? What services are you providing?
So ProTenders very simply started off as a way for us to internally manage our own tendering process. As a company, so again, our family business was a architecture firm from A to Z. So engineering, architecture, supervision, tendering. We used to spend fortunes in paper and in time managing the process. It's very paper intensive. I mean, a simple example of a project that I know of, which is the Abu Dhabi airport. A single project, a single bid for that project by a single contractor was 3 tons of documents that had to be printed, stamped, signed, and shipped. Three
Wow.
tons. And that's for one bidder, one project. So
Wow.
imagine the amount of paper that's being wasted. So ProTenders initially was developed as an in-house solution for our firm to really optimize and streamline the whole process from A to Z. What really then became the next step of the evolution was, well, who do you invite, right? I know my local market very well, but now I'm trying to build in different cities, different countries, different regions, where I might not know who are the right people to work with. And so the idea was construction is very much of a reference game, i.e., you're going to work with people based on references. Who designed that building, who supplied that material. So the idea was to replicate the LinkedIn model for construction, where people would be able to create their online profiles, and you could be able to say, show me the 5 biggest contractors that have designed high-rise towers or have designed palaces in that kind of region, have worked with company ABC, and have an office there. The follow-up to that was that suppliers came in and said, this is absolutely amazing, but can we also list our products? And so the platform also grew to become the first block of our marketplace, where you're able to find out suppliers based on references. The last step of it is we got so much data about construction that was all highly correlated that we knew more than effectively anybody what was going on around town. And so the idea today for ProTenders is 3 things. It's a marketing tool, it's a biz dev tool, and it's a procurement tool all in one. And the idea is to connect every single part of the ecosystem, from developers, consultants, contractors, suppliers, and manufacturers, and have them all collaborate for anything which is the construction economy, if you want. Getting found, bidding, finding opportunities, selling, being specified, eventually financing, logistics, everything else. So it's the central platform that connects the whole construction supply chain into one.
The question that comes to mind here is, we've seen a lot of people trying to do LinkedIn for X, LinkedIn for Y, LinkedIn for Z. What made ProTenders work?
Because it's not just a LinkedIn for things. It's the combination of the LinkedIn plus the intelligence, plus the marketing tool, plus the tendering. Again, it's a combination of all these things into one, which adds value to everybody in the ecosystem. Because again, if you can just be found, but you can't do anything else, what's the point? If you can see what's happening in the city, but you can't really bid on them, what's the point? The whole point is that you can have on the same platform, find the right people, connect, bid, ask to be invited to a tender, submit a tender, right away have that push in your profile, which gives you more visibility. So it's all highly connected and highly data-driven.
Okay. You've seen a lot of data being in ProTenders. I want to ask here a little bit, what are the gaps you still see that the MENA region or KSA, UAE, and other countries need? Or what are the gaps in construction you've seen through ProTenders that like, okay, people aren't working on this, we need this technology, we need this to come and play, we need this player to come and play in the market?
So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, a couple of things that I've seen that are really important is there's still too many tools that are not talking to each other, right? I mean, we're only part of the ecosystem, but it's a highly fragmented construction or industry where because it's fragmented, because tools don't talk to each other, you have a lot of inefficiencies, right? 2, there isn't yet a dominant player that really connects the whole ecosystem together, which is what we're trying to do. And the reason why that is because one of the biggest problem in construction isn't so much the process itself, is the cash flow. The cash flow is the big issues. So we've seen a lot of buy now, pay later for consumers. We're now seeing that happening more and more for businesses, and we're even seeing cases of that being applied specifically for construction in Saudi.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
So the reason that is because as a supplier, you're selling today X amount of materials, but you won't get paid until the 3
6
layers
months
above
or
you get
3.
paid,
Right.
whatever it is, which creates massive amount of cash flow issues for these people. And so if we're able to, through data, to understand what's happening, understand who's selling to who and what price and compared to market averages, then you can start financing either directly or indirectly these companies. So you're bringing through data a transparency or level of a level of decision making which you could never have before, and that is the real cherry on top. Is you're then able to de-risk a lot of the construction industry by using data.
Okay. And we know sometimes the construction or people working in the construction industry are sometimes really they hold on to what they have. They want to advance. How are you approaching that? Like how are you getting in and helping people build on that technology?
Listen, I think those times are rapidly changing. I
Okay.
think those times were applicable when it was the old generation that was heading these companies. Most of these companies today are being run more and more by younger people that grew up with technology and can't imagine not working with it. You've had enough big success stories in the US and Europe for people to understand that yes, it is possible. And again, in some places like Saudi, it's being driven top down. Like you have to modernize.
Okay.
So it's a question, I think, about right time, right product, right opportunities, and things are moving that direction very, I mean, rapidly in this moment.
Do you believe ProTenders could become a unicorn in the construction tech industry in the MENA region?
Do I believe? Of course I believe, man. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
Now, okay, what's the 5-year plan that gets you there?
So, I mean, it's really not a 5-year plan. It's much shorter than this. So,
Wow,
again,
okay.
the reason why we're absolutely sure we can be unicorn in a few years is again we have a unique platform that connects everybody together. Our addressable market isn't local by any means, not regional. It's a global industry because construction is a global industry. People that are
Yes.
selling, that are trying to get into Saudi, they're trying to get into the region, they're trying to design those projects are international firms. So you have access to right away a very wide audience. You can penetrate those markets where you can sell, give different value to each of these different players, and you're then creating a critical mass of construction companies on the same platform, which means you can then offer them different services. Again, marketing with all the ads, the opportunities of trying to find what's happening in the market with again, a bunch of automations there, tendering, marketplaces, logistics, financing. So we're by bringing everybody to the same platform from government all the suppliers, you're effectively giving everybody value, but at the same time understand what's happening. And this is what makes you a unicorn. It's the value of data and the fact that you have data that's so highly integrated and so highly correlated that makes you effectively very hard to remove once you're there, and that drives the valuation up.
Okay. Here's a question. You become a unicorn, you get all this funding, or what's the plan? Exit, get listed, or just keep this amazing business and hold it forever?
I mean, listen, I don't think we're here to. I'm not here to make a quick buck. I mean, I've
Okay.
invested, 7 years, 8 years of my life into this business. I've invested millions of my own money into this business. I've taken it to Singapore, London, San Francisco, Canada, Taiwan, Monaco, and every single time we've shown it to people, people were like, "The hell? How did you guys do this?" So we definitely know there's a massive opportunity for it, and we're not going to sell it unless we feel that we can't take it any further,
Okay.
and that there's no other way for us to sell. I think an IPO for us would probably be the way I would rather go than anything else.
I saw one of your LinkedIn posts. You were working in the UAE and then you rebooted ProTenders and relaunched it in KSA. Can you tell us more of that decision? Has the UAE reached its full potential? You mentioned at the beginning that the KSA is just booming and going, and it's a very growing industry. What other factors played a role in that decision?
So, so it's a bit of a tricky question because again, I mean, I grew up in the UAE. For me, it's home. It's where I spent most of my life by now. However, I think for a business, for entrepreneur, you have to pick the path of least resistance. I mean, building a business is hard enough, and you can't spend your time trying to wait for people to change their minds on and give you the right ecosystem to build a unicorn. So with that in mind, there's a lot more support, there's a lot more interest, there's a lot more money being invested in stuff like what we do in Saudi Arabia, right? I could wait another 5 years for things to get to the right step, to the right stage in the UAE, or I can just say, you know what, we'll basically move our company to Saudi, we'll become a Saudi-based company, and we'll ride the wave of what Saudi is doing. Again, like I said, Saudi has the advantage of having a young ruler that is very um, very decisive into what he wants to happen. They've made all these commitments for the projects and for everything else. The country is on a path of radical modernization, and there's going to be massive amount of construction happening, right, going on for the next few years, and they need a platform like ours. So it just makes complete sense for us to be there.
If I'm a young entrepreneur, I'm 19 years old, I have a team, and I want to grab a piece of this pie. What would your advice be? How can I get in there?
Connect with people like me or anybody else who's already there. I mean, don't try and do it yourself. Again,
Okay.
I'm a big believer in doing it together in win-win more than lose. So if you're in that sector that I'm in and I'm already established there, reach out to me, right? We're happy to find a way to do it together. You're much stronger collaborating than competing. One of the big things that we did at some point where we were trying to scale the platform is I like to ride people waves, right? I understand who's bigger than us, ride their wave so we get bigger with them while both getting values. So we reached out to, when we were trying to get the ProTenders name out there, we reached out to one of the biggest construction media in the region, ITP, and we went to see the director or the editor-in-chief of one of their magazines called Construction Week, and we said, guys, you guys have editorial, we have data, what about we find a way to collaborate? That was on that Thursday. On there, he said, you know what, that's interesting, propose something. We spent the weekend working on a small plugin that they would add to their templates, where every time they would mention a company or a project, we would basically superimpose a link where people could hover and it would show them who the company or the project is. And when they would click on it, it would take us to our website. It took us literally a weekend. It was nothing more than a couple hours of work. And it drove 400,000 people to our website every single month, right? So find people that have a need for you that you can collaborate with, and give them value and get value out of them. And this is the best way. So same thing for if you're a new entrepreneur, find people that are there, that are people that are doing close to what you're doing, they can use your experience and work with them.
What makes KSA or the GCC a unique ecosystem? We see, I mean, if we look at the macroeconomics of the world, we look at Europe, we look at the US, everyone's struggling. Everyone's speaking about inflation, recession. We look at the GCC, KSA, life is normal. People are working, there's a vision, there's growth. What's different?
I don't think it's different, man. There is also here, there's local problems. The difference is that price of oil is being what it is. There's a lot of capital for people to invest and make the economy keep on growing. US, Europe has other problems that are a bit more intrinsic, which has to do with that they've overspent during COVID, which they didn't do here. So again, it's a give and take. During COVID, people there were able to survive a lot better the crisis than we were, because here we really didn't get much support. Whereas there they got a lot of money to survive crisis. But now that the crisis is over and you got to go pay back, you got to pay back the price of what happened before. So there's good and bad at different times. Right now, the UAE or the region is benefiting from people that are moving all their capital into the region here, so it's giving us a lot of extra capital. And Saudi again is a different beast, because you have a perfect confluence of a visionary leader that has a long time ahead of him, that has made this, has the capital to actually deliver his vision. So it's interesting time definitely to be here.
We saw, and we just spoke about that overspending during COVID. We didn't see just that on governments. We saw that in the startup and VC ecosystem. We see a lot of very small number of companies, sexy companies, as we could call them, being overvalued and overfunded to become unicorns between parentheses, and then fail, layoffs, all of that. What are your thoughts on this subject?
Oh man, so many. So there has definitely been a lack of professionalism from a lot of VCs, I think, over the last few years, where people got caught up in the hype machine. And a lot of companies went up in valuations way too late because they thought that COVID was going to change everything and people were not going to go back to work. I mean, what you see after COVID, and it was pretty predictable, is that once the real life reopened, most people went back to what they used to do before, traveling and having personal meetings. So all these valuations that were overinflated by one, free money, and two, people overthinking the value of these companies, collapsed quite rapidly. And again, money was so cheap that you didn't have to think about a company. You're better off spending money than trying to see that company actually make sense for the long term. The region is a bit different because the region never had so much free money. The region here has a bit of a problem, which is a different thing, which is a severe lack of risk appetite.
Okay.
They would rather invest in 50 clones of the same company rather than in 50 different companies, right? So it's the region typically always ends up having these fights between 5 copies of everything, Groupon clones and shoe and fashion commerces and 5 minute delivery services and whatever else it is. So instead of spreading their eggs across different industries and having them all of them succeed, like they have the FOMO, which is basically if one guy does it, I gotta have the same thing as the other one. And that's because fundamentally, I think they don't understand. Like, I think most people investing in tech here aren't tech, don't have a tech background, and so they don't actually understand what tech actually is. Yeah.
That's interesting. And one of the theories I had, or one of my goals, hopefully in the future, if I was able to raise a fund, uh, I see a lot of, let's say, last mile delivery startups, and it's like 7 of them, 8 of them. Each one of them is working in a different country. Well, if I have a fund, I would go in and I would buy all 7, create one big company, make it work, and have a unicorn out of it. But I see this problem here. We spoke about that problem on startups. I want to go a little bit into crypto, and I've seen some posts you wrote about crypto, with what like happened to FTX, the crypto markets. Do you see a real use case of crypto in different industries? Like, let's say, for example, do you see an integration of crypto, Web3, and the construction industry?
So I'm a big believer in crypto because I do think that it brings back, it removes a lot of the archaic systems that are there. Again, when you do a transfer, it takes you a week to receive the money. It makes no sense nowadays, right? So I think a lot of the blockchain technologies that are behind these cryptocurrencies are here to solve these problems. Now the problem is, again, crypto, as anything else, became a bubble. Nowadays, everything is a bubble. So the value of what crypto was got overly hyped and overly inflated. But doesn't mean the technology behind it is actually bad, right? And so I think you have to differentiate between crypto and between cryptocurrencies, between the blockchain technology and cryptos. I do think some of the core cryptos are going to stay, whether it's Bitcoin, ETH, or a few other ones, because again, they're here to solve real problems. Okay. Some of the easy stuff like NFT or stuff like some of the thousands of different cryptos that came out in the last hype phase will die, and they should die because they were never meant to actually have any value behind them. So cryptocurrencies that are here to provide liquidity to a proper blockchain as real use cases and bring value will stay, definitely. All the other ones will die, and that's fine. For construction, again, we are looking to integrate blockchain into what we do. And the reason is because what you want to do is you want to provide a single source of truth for everything that happens in a building, right? So who designed, who supplied, who bought, what material, from where they come from. And so that gives you a lot more visibility into then if you want to maintain a building or buy into a building or sell a building, you can understand the whole history of it. The same way when you buy a car, you have a whole history of it. We'll do the same for buildings. So you have a full record of everything that happens for a building on the ledger. And then do a few more things about it. So I do think there's value in blockchain. It will be applied to construction. It already is being done in the US, and we're planning to bring the same to the region.
What does such a UI, because we know blockchain, the UI, UX, the user interface is a little bit hard or like not so user friendly. Are there solutions coming up with user-friendly blockchain usage in construction or in other areas?
Again, I don't see blockchain as being something that needs to be UI. Blockchain is just a way for you to record information in a non-modifiable way, right? So it helps you provide trust
transparency.
where you don't really have trust. Well, trust and transparency where you don't have it. So you don't necessarily have a specific UI for it, right? We just want to use the blockchain for what it is. The same way you can use a database, okay? So we're not planning to have a sexy UI for, that's not what we're trying to do.
Uh, do you invest? Do you angel invest?
I do as much as I can.
Okay.
I do as much as I can. I mentor a lot. I invest, in quite a few projects.
What type of industries or what type of startups do you focus on investing? Do people reach out to you, or like how does these investments happen? Do you find a startup, you reach out to the founder?
No, so my first tech investment was into a company that actually was based out of Lebanon that had just moved to the US, and it was actually for a platform that we used called Wupra. And Wupra was
Okay.
one of the first. It was one of the first real-time analytics where you can basically see in real time who was on the website, what are they doing, who are they, and so on and so forth. And so when they opened up the round, I was like, you know what, I'm investing in it. I love this thing so much. So that was my first tech investment. And all the ones that I've done afterwards, again, I mentor dozens of companies at any point in time. And so typically when I see the combination of things that I understand, I get excited about, I like the founders, and they can't raise money from somewhere else, I'll be the first one to put money in.
Okay.
So tokenization, I've done esports, I've done e-commerce, I've done AI for e-commerce. I've done, I mean, very different things. But again, it's just me from like saying, understanding what the teams are fundamentally working on, and just loving the idea. And again, seeing them not being able to raise money from other sources.
Okay.
I don't do copycats. I
Okay.
absolutely refuse to do copycats. I refuse to do anything that is. If they're trying to me, if you tell me we're doing this that's been done somewhere else here, I'm like, yeah, go somebody else. I like innovation. I like new ideas. I need new concepts. I like the risk factor of it. Yeah.
Let's say you were building ProTenders. It could be the construction industry or any other industry. What startup would you go and build?
Today,
Yes.
um, today I'm actually a big fan of anything which is tokenization. To be frank with you.
Okay.
I think where it's one of the most interesting uses of blockchain today. The applications of it are almost unlimited. Buying parts of everything is something which I believe a lot in. It democratizes investment, and you want people to be able to buy effectively part of a building or a car or a music or a horse or whatever, or a piece of art, the same way they would be buying a stock, right? So I think that is going to bring in a whole new way of investing money for people, right? And so you've seen all these robocalls and robo ETFs and investment platforms, and I think something similar for investing is bound to happen. Hasn't been done yet at the scale that I'm thinking about, but I mean, I'm always on the lookout for it.
Yeah. When you were speaking, I was thinking about we're saying the UAE and KSA are booming, or the GCC is booming. We could have something like OpenSea, where here's a project that's gonna happen. You want to fund it, or you want to take a portion of it. You could go and invest,
Yeah,
and this token could grow ahead.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the cool thing about entrepreneurship. There's literally, you have ideas every single day of what you could do. I mean, the problem isn't finding ideas. The problem is
Yes.
finding either time to actually buid them, or you qualifying that they're big enough for you to actually want to spend, 5 years of your life into them. Because
Yeah.
like it or not, I mean, your time is limited.
My last question: if you were to drop everything right now and you were to identify one problem, could be worldwide, could be in the country you're in, one problem that you would spend your life solving, what would that problem be?
Um, Peace on earth? No, I'm kidding. um, um, I think, listen, I think it's a big cliche, but I think we're definitely on the verge of a big crisis, whether it be global warming, whether it be the financial model that we currently have that's reached limits, the fact, I mean, whether it's a bunch of things. I think the world is coming into a point so it's funny because I had this conversation with a friend of mine about 20 years ago, And I remember very clearly when he said, you know what, we're quite blessed. I'm like, why? It's because we're probably the last generation to be able to enjoy all the benefits of technology and all the good things about it without paying any of the big prices
Yes.
of what's going to come out of it. And so I'm a big believer in the fact that we're way past due for global warming. And so the question is, how do you then move people away um, how do you try and save what we have? How do you try and save knowledge? How do you try and save or get people to move away from all pollution and everything else? Is how do you really find an open way to actually build a society which doesn't need to always, that is sustainable in the long term.
I love that. Karim, I think it's a great episode. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
What I really liked is you're someone who had a family business kind of given to him, but you grew that. You went in and had tremendous growth in terms of ProTenders, in terms of your thinking, the way you think about technology, uh, the clarity of mind you have, the way and insight you look at many different stuff. I think we learned a lot. Uh, ProTenders is I love the platform, and I saw ProTenders, and I've interacted with you before on comments, and I saw the way you think. And when I saw that, I'm like, I have to get him on the pod. I have to listen to him speak more. And I'm a big fan of ProTenders. Uh, Keep on going. Success is ahead. I appreciate you being on the podcast. Thank you very much. Any last words? Are you hiring? Uh, where could people follow more of what you're doing?
So listen, we're going to go through a massive phase of growth now that we're relocating, removing, and looking to close a big round of funding. So we're definitely going to need amazing people to come work with us. So if you're anybody working that wants to see construction being more efficient, be more data-driven, feel free to reach out. I mean, we're going to need people from everywhere.
Love that.
And thank you, buddy.
No,
Good
thank
to
you
be
for
on the
being here.
show, and thank you for having me.